Hello, it's Yohani, and since it's my first video, I'd like to discuss something special about one of my favorite games, Hypixel skyblock. For the longest time, skyblock progression has been all over the place, never truly having a balanced system and just going off of whatever did the most damage or gave you the fastest runs inside of dungeons. That isn't initially a problem. The problem only comes in when the main weapon progression for melee damage goes up in price from 390,000 to 7 million, after that 170 million, and all the way up to 300 million. So you can see the problem is there's only 4 viable weapons that are staples in progression, and also the main weapons that you see people using inside and outside of dungeons. Same goes for any other class. Example, Archer only has 2 bows. The first bow you can get costs about 18 million coins, and the second bow costs about roughly 630 million coins at the time we're recording this video. As you can see, there's only 2 bows Archer can use, and they go up in price by a lot than the other one. Another example of completely broken progression is Mage. The one class that stayed on top despite nerfs, patches, buffs, and fix. It stayed the most wanted and played class inside of dungeons. That's not a problem. After all, it is a good class with good clearing and good DPS. The problem is progression in weapons. The Mage progression usually goes Dreadlord Sword, valued at 3,000 coins, to Bonzo Staff, valued at 3 million coins, and all the way up to Spirit Scepter, valued at 14 million coins. And for people who are later on in the game, the Midas Staff, 100 million paid ones, go for 180 million coins plus on the auction house. Now that may not be a problem, the progression seems pretty stable. What happens after that is shocking. After the Midas Staff, you have no other weapon to buy except for the Hyperion. It's valued at 1.3 billion coins at the time we're recording this video, and yet this class still has the healthiest progression in the game. With the most amount of viable weapons from floors 1 to 6, only the Hyperion being viable on all floors. This class is the most expensive class to play, and the most healthy progression class to play compared to other classes, despite the jump in price going up by 1.1 billion coins for the 2 weapons next to each other in progression. With the broken progression of Mage and how good the Hyperion is, people have suggested fixes for the problems with Mage. Well, nerf the Hyperion so it's not as good, or buff other weapons. But personally, I think we just need to add even more weapons that are viable in dungeons, and remove weapons that cause weapon overflow. So instead of nerfing the Terminator to the ground and making it as useful as a Juju, maybe add more short bows for each stage progression in the game. Another problem is the aforementioned Hyperion, the god of all weapons, and yet its only requirement is a measly Catacomb skill 24 and a floor 7 completion. This is a huge problem, as a weapon that has less uses than a Hyperion, aka the Terminator, has an Enderman Slayer 7 requirement, one of the hardest slayers to do in skyblock, and quite a high level. The Terminator has less uses than a Hyperion, as it's pointless outside of dungeons unless you're doing dragons, which is also a problem. But an even bigger problem is the Hyperion dealing upwards of 1.2 million damage per hit, and some endgame players managing to do 3 million damage per hit, which is absurd considering it has a cooldown of 0.0075 seconds, only to prevent auto-clicking to insta-kill bosses, because yes, Hyperion was that broken at one point in the game. Another major problem is melee being obsolete due to the Hyperion existing, and only being made relevant by the Giant Sword and Dark Claymore, as they deal high damage and are good for outside of dungeons, at a 170 million and 300 million price tag for each respective weapon, as well as the Axe to Shred being nerfed, which is the only thing that made Berserker viable in higher floors and even inside of dungeons. So melee is currently lacking in multiple factors, which are damage, clearing, and overall joy of playing the class, as melee is straightforward and has no cool abilities like the Terminator beam or any Mage weapon. So with all that being said, I think Hypixel admins should add new viable weapons for all the classes with interesting abilities. It seems as though Hypixel admins had their chance with the Crimson Isles but missed it by not changing much and adding it as if it were a new island and not a new way of playing the game. Anyways, with all that being said, I hope you enjoyed, and peace out, friends.